And welcome to another recording of Table Talk. Let me remind you that the team at UMI is here to take the hard work out of finding and using the best information, expertise, and finance. Our role is to help your businesses go further. My name is Pascal Fintoni, and my guest today is Nigel Cliffe. Nigel is a renowned LinkedIn trainer and consultant. He's been working directly with businesses and individuals to help them turn LinkedIn into an invaluable resource for lead generation. Nigel, a warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Really nice to see you, Pascal. We've known it for quite a few years on and off, so it's nice to have this interview with you.
Yeah, do you know, I'm realizing that now the best way for me to keep in touch with my friends and peers is to do webinars.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
So
Yeah.
the reason why we've got Nigel with us today is that I was really keen to have a conversation so that Nigel could share his insights into how you can use LinkedIn to grow your business and your personal brand, very importantly. So we've got a few questions for you, Nigel, today. But before we move on to those, I wonder whether we could recap maybe on your own professional journey with LinkedIn, from your background in business development and online marketing. What was the tipping point that allowed you to then set up something that is a core offer for you and your customers?
Yeah, sure. I was kind of a very early adopter of the digital world, going back to even the mid-80s, before Macintosh was around. And looking back at that time since, it's always been very much in that forefront of digital technology change. So I've set up a number of companies through that period. Some have been successful, some haven't. Failures are part of success. In my last venture, a company called the Marketing Lab, which was set up in about 2007, it was totally about lead generation through people visiting websites and attracting a greater response and resulting achievement of sales through website generation. A number of my clients were business to business, and I was an early adopter of LinkedIn and just found I was using it in a way that was interesting. And I was kind of consulting for my clients in this lead generation space. And we were having some really interesting results. And I remember the first time when somebody turned around and said to me, that was really great. Could you tell us how you did that? And I went, well, I guess I could. But it was the first time sort of it turned from a consultative sort of thing I was doing on the fly to actually a positive thing I was then helping people direct a strategy around. So that probably happened firstly around about 9 years ago, if I recall correctly. And it just grew and grew and grew. In about 2012, I began to think I should turn this into a brand. Value Exchange was created in 2013. And long story short, it was turned into a separate limited entity in 2014. So and pretty much from the moment it was created, I was doing this LinkedIn training thing full time, helping businesses understand LinkedIn to the point and the depth that they could turn it into a lead generation tool for themselves. And even now, many people still underestimate the power of LinkedIn and what it can do for you, which of course is why I've got a career. But so long may it continue. But grasp the power of it, can really make great strides in their lead generation process.
All right, we're going to delve into that, very, very shortly. So my reaction when I'm listening to you is you mentioned the term lead generation a few times. Can we perhaps explore that? What would be your simple definition? How would you explain what lead generation is all about?
Good question. The days have gone when selling in its traditional form exists. You can't knock on somebody's door. You can't pick up the telephone, not very easily. Some people still, make claims that that's a good strategy. I have to say, in my mind, having 2 success out of 100 calls is how many people have you upset on that journey? 98 potentially. But so lead generation is about one step in the process of achieving what you want to achieve in terms of developing your business. So the lifeblood of every business is new business. How do we go about creating a channel, a process of generating new business? So I think you can really articulate that and measure it very carefully now. And LinkedIn has just got a critical part in that role. So with improving personal brand, building relationships with the people who can influence your future opportunities in a gentle and measured and planned way. And most people do not see LinkedIn in that space. They see it as a, you know, at the worst end of the scale. They see it as a place where you go and tart up your profile when you want looking for a new job. That's the worst time in the world to do it, because if you haven't dealt with your settings correctly, people can see you looking for a job by changing all your settings. So, for me, it's a huge opportunity for anybody in business development, particularly around marketing as well, to create influence that is a part of the step on that journey to a conversation that will lead to a business opportunity. Does that explain it in a decent way?
It does. So I want to pick up on something. So the gentled, measured, and planned way. So back to essentially what I call the essentials. Before someone was going to delve into LinkedIn, we need to maybe have a plan. We need to maybe understand the audience. We need to maybe understand what success looks like. Exactly. But then you said that leads to a conversation. So are you still thinking that despite the fact that we are using the internet, ultimately there has to be that moment of human interaction whereby you, the figurehead of the business, will go from a maybe to a yes?
Absolutely. LinkedIn is a step on that journey. It's not the end of the journey, and people are too keen, eager to think of LinkedIn as the place where they can sell and almost convert a sale, and it's simply not that. It's a place to build trust. Is the best word I can use. It's a place to build trust in your personal brand, and create the confidence in an audience that will be watching you. The algorithms sort that out. We come back to that later, and getting to a point where when they need what you have, you're the natural go-to person for that product or service. So it's not a place to make connections in order that the next thing I can do is send out, oh, thanks for connecting. Can I tell you about my new 2-for-1 offer? Please read my latest blog. Have you seen this new page on our website? No. Whoa. That's much too quick in the process. Just get the LinkedIn connection in such a way as we're building trust 1% by 1%. So initially a connection, always reply back to that connection saying, thank you, that's great. I'm delighted to be a connection. I look forward to sharing, things around our industry sector, whatever commonality you might have with that person. You might be in networking groups together. You might be in the same industry. You might be in the same location. So you find something of something that you can hang a relationship around at that early stage. And it's, I look forward to seeing you around. That's it. At that point in time, that's as far as that relationship should go. Any further than that, and you're too much in somebody's face. And the minute you turn on that sales feature of yourself to that person, if the timing's not right, the place is not right, the moment's not right, you're actually going to damage that process, not enhance it by pushing that sales button. So in fact, LinkedIn is not a place to sell. I start there. LinkedIn is not the place to sell. What happens is you build a relationship, you build a dialogue, you build a trust, and at a certain point in time, the endeavor is to say, to find the moment when the situation is right to say, hey, it's been great having your LinkedIn connection. Thanks for sharing, in some of my comments. I've really enjoyed some of the things you've shared. And it seems to me like we've got a lot in common. Do you have time for a virtual coffee? What's a virtual coffee, Nigel? Sometimes that comes back. Some people get it. So, well, listen, I just love to know my connections. I value my connections. I value my network. And it seems like we might be able to help each other. I thought we could have 10 minutes on the phone to say hello. Oh, that sounds nice. Nothing wrong with that. And there's no intention in that 10 minutes for me to pitch at you. It's literally to get to know you. A bit like you and I have done. Nothing more than that. You and I have never stood in front of each other with a business card and said, let me tell you what I can sell you, Pascal. That doesn't happen. And it's the same on LinkedIn. So it should be really gentle. When done in the right way, in the right time, very rarely is that invitation to have a conversation turned down, because that's what humans do. And most people say, yeah, that sounds nice. When's free? We put a date in the diary, and we get a situation like you and I having now. Often, if we're not located in the same geographic location, and we'll literally say hello, like a chat, like we're having now, and a leading kind of question that I find is useful in that environment is, what challenges are you facing right now? And if there's an opportunity at that point, then you think, well, there's a hook. I think I might be able to help with that. Then there's an opportunity to say, well, funnily enough, I've experienced a few examples like that myself. I found this was an answer to that problem, and very quickly you will find the synergy, the relationship works. You know what it's like. Sometimes we've got a chemistry with people and it works, other times it doesn't. But often in that conversation, good things come out of it. Hey, this has been really super. I think we've got a lot in common. Let's meet for a real coffee. And now you've you've determined that an actual meeting between you is going to be valuable. But it's a human thing you're never going to do business with somebody that you've not spoken to in a business-to-business environment that you've not met, that you're not having a coffee with. So it's a ladder. It's a ladder of engagement that starts with potentially a LinkedIn connection or even a follow-up. It doesn't need to be connection. It's just taking an interest in somebody that's in your target market. And it makes me also think that this isn't a random thing one does on LinkedIn. You don't sort of you don't engage with every conversation that's going on. Be mindful of what it is that you're about and find the conversations and the people who are interested in what you're interested in. And therefore, part of the strategy, which would be worked out much earlier on with a client, would be, what is it we're trying to achieve here? Like you said earlier, very, very correctly, what does success look like? What does a good client look like? And so often, when you ask a person that question, they say, well, anybody. and a little thing inside me goes, it's not anybody, it's the somebody, and the somebody will have certain characteristics. They will have a certain job title, they will be in a given location, they'll be in a certain industry sector, they might even be of a certain age demographic, they might have certain qualifications. There will be many features that a target customer will have that means we need to be targeting very carefully that category of prospect customer and existing customer. And then our conversation and our engagement needs to be very tightly in the area that we're interested in. What's going on in the world politically right now? Nightmare. Am I interested? Hugely. Would I share it on LinkedIn? No way. It's not my speciality. I'm not a politician. So there are many times I might think of getting engaged in conversations. I think, actually, that's not serving my interests particularly well. And this is also really, really critical, Pascal. It's making sure that LinkedIn's algorithms understand what it is that interests you. And the algorithms effectively sort that out for you, which is a fantastically wonderful feature of LinkedIn. If you've got a strategy and you're determined and you work within the confines of that strategy, LinkedIn almost does the rest. It wants to give you content. It wants to keep you on the platform. It wants to make you interested and be on and get value out of LinkedIn. So it uses the data which you're providing by what you're sharing and interested in to basically provide you more of the same. Equally, people out there that you're trying to attract are also interested in the similar topics, and therefore the algorithms are serving your content to people who you might know, you might be connected to, but beautifully, it's sending the same content to people who are second and third degree removed from you, but who are also interested in the same content. So here's the power. It's exponential. Your message, your data, your engagement has the opportunity to reach a vast audience, and done correctly, it will reach the audience that you're trying to attract. And when the time is right for them to want you, I kind of think of, we're inverting the sales process here. I'm not knocking on doors asking you anything. I'm not wanting your sale anymore. I'm simply being there and providing knowledge, wisdom, expertise. I'm trying to demonstrate that I'm a human being. I'm a nice guy. And at the end of it, the audience will find me, and they will approach me at the time that is right for them. So it's kind of, and that's very difficult for a salesperson. Typically, anybody in lead generation, they want to be hitting the phone, they want to be making the calls, they want to be, sending out the emails. And actually, I think there's a slow nature of change as to how digital influence can change how we think about that channel. I'm not saying those channels aren't right in the appropriate place, but there's a new way of generating business. And LinkedIn, for those who get it, is highly successful in doing that. You know, I've got so many stories of incredible, really incredible outcomes that you know, show that this is possible. Sorry, long answer to a shorter question, but
no, it was absolutely brilliant, because I was making notes, as you can tell, for the show notes when we published this online. And listening to you reminds me of, you know, this idea of you're better off having many champions than one customer. What I mean by that is using LinkedIn, where because of the manner in which you behave, people can start to recommend you without having used your services, but just because of the way in which you behaved, with the sharing information, with the commenting on conversations and so on, you are letting people know what you're all about, which is what I've noted down. And I think that, you know, ultimately the challenge for all of us is to build a reputation and to allow someone to form an opinion about who we are without that individual talking to us, because they're going to gather information from different parts of the internet. And as you know, because I know that's part of what you do, LinkedIn always ranks really well against your name and your company name. That's a guaranteed, you know, listing. So let's. So we're going to move on actually as part of the second segment about, so how do you go about setting all this up? But before we move into that, can we just spend a moment to ask you about what I call the challenge? Why do you find, or what are the reasons, according to your experience, of that hesitation about using LinkedIn fully, or still the hesitation of moving towards a gentle, measured, and planned approach, as opposed to a pseudo-advertising way of doing business?
Okay. There are kind of two key features I feel that are essential parts of a good strategy. And it goes without saying, but I'll add something to that in a second, that one should have a great profile. It amazes me. I often ask an audience, speaking at events and training, you know, put your hands up if you're proud of your LinkedIn profile. And I can tell you that typically 5% of any audience will put their hands up. So I direct a question at the 95%. What? You know, this is your digital presence online. This is the place where people are more likely to seek your services and find out about you long before they're going to pick up the telephone. So if you're not proud of your profile, and your profile is not doing 100% of the job in attracting that person to you, then you're already behind the front foot. You know, you've already potentially lost the game. I mean, people could be looking in it, effectively your shop window, not particularly liking or being impressed by what they see, and going on somewhere else. It's literally that important. So having a great profile and maximizing its efficiency from an SEO perspective, getting the keywords in there, you know, making your contact details easy to find, all sorts of things. You know, nice profile picture. Isn't that obvious? You know, not the pina colada on the beach. You know, with your speedos on. You know, it all goes on. We've all seen it. Professional photo and all that stuff. Can't begin to cover all that. So, but having a professional profile, number one. Otherwise, we're going to let ourselves down. This is the challenge. Even if people have got a great profile, there is a real issue on the confidence to know how to communicate and engage on LinkedIn. So it's despite the, you know, I can stand in front of people and you know, talk at them for hours about, you know, you should do this, do that, engage, you know, like and comment and share and share opinion, share your knowledge. And I then often ask the question, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, what are you actually going to do? And everybody sits back in the chair, you know, like, arms go folded, you know, the whole body language. I said, come on, you know, I'm not here now. I've enthused you that LinkedIn's a fabulous thing. What are you going to do at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning when I'm not here, folks? And it's that very lack of the confidence that is the biggest challenge that people face. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to engage. You know, if I'm posting content, you know, is anybody going to be interested? And they say, well, do you know what? Until we actually do that, even with the best profile in the world, we're still dead to LinkedIn and to an audience. So having a great profile alone will serve us no success whatsoever. We have to engage, and that engagement comes through commenting, liking, sharing. And here's a way I think of it. You wouldn't, let's imagine our mates were going to the pub and we were a little bit late. And they're already stood around the bar, and you walk in and they're already chatting and laughing, and there's a conversation taking place. You wouldn't barge straight into the middle of that conversation and say, "Oh, I'm sorry I'm late, guys. Let me tell you about the horrendous journey I've had, coming here on the train today," and stop the conversation they were having. You'd glide into the bar, and you'd listen to the tone of the conversation, and for the first few minutes, you'd see what the conversation was about, and then at an appropriate moment, you'd join the conversation, knowing what the pace and the tone and the subject matter is. It's a bit like that on LinkedIn. What about, rather than going straight for, I'm going to post the most knowledgeable article in the world, just join other people's conversations within your target strategy market. Actually, that's a really great point you made there, Pascal. Thank you for sharing that. That's all I need to say. That's engagement at the starting point. But then find the moment when you can add something to the conversation that's taking place by adding something of your own knowledge and intelligence, your own specialization. And very quickly, you build that personal reputation on LinkedIn. And people are looking in there. You can view this directly. The measure of that interest is how many people are looking at your profile. And if people are looking at a profile, that's an illustration directly of the interest that you are initiating or creating in what you're sharing and the conversations you're having. And when you feel the confidence, then think, right, I've got something to say now, possibly stimulated by the conversations you've been involved in on the sidelines. This is often how a piece of content emerges. You listen and you see perspectives, and you think, I've got an opinion about that I'd like to share. Put it into a post. Share that with your audience. Say, this question's been asked of me several times over the last couple of weeks, and here's my thoughts about how I answer that question. And you share your answer to the question, and perhaps engage or invite engagement in that conversation by leaving that post by saying, hey, I feel pretty strongly about this, but I know this isn't the only answer to the solution or to the problem. What do you think, guys? That's inviting other people to join the conversation, and then the debate happens, then the interest happens, then people are looking at your profile, then they're wishing to connect with you because you're an influencer in your space, and that's the way to build this trust and engagement on LinkedIn. And obviously it goes on from there to different levels, but that's the barrier. That ability to engage and get involved is the barrier that people have a lack of confidence or even a fear of doing. So often my challenge, in a training environment is getting people over that single hurdle. If I can do that, they'll probably have the success. They'll probably, it will probably go somewhere. If they don't, nothing's going to happen.
And that's interesting because you and I can reflect on when we kind of dig a bit deeper with the audience, when we build trust as trainers and consultants, they will on occasion confess it's think about the opinion of others. That is also the stumbling block. They also on occasion suffer from what I call false modesty, which is that my discovery of a recent article or my view opinion is nowhere near as valuable or interesting or good as some of the people that I connect with, and this is just something that people have got to work through. Because back to your idea of a conversation, what I say to people is that you've got two things. You've got the sales and marketing logic of you've got to find a way to let people understand what you're all about, and the best way to do so is to share in whatever you want to share. But the other thing is quite simply, you will be a richer professional out of it. What I mean about that is the connections and the stimulation, and sometimes that will just give you a nice boost of the day when somebody says thank you or kind of comments on. So you're also cheating yourself from that human interaction, albeit through digital means, where somebody else out there saying thank you. And I know that you get quite a few thank you from your own audience, and you and I keep going because of the thank yous. So, but also this hesitation kind of robs you from those interactions, which really make a big difference to your day and to your career.
Absolutely. And we're all stimulated by that normal human interaction, aren't we? And if somebody says thank you, I appreciate that that counts for a great deal. Without moving the conversation too widely, one of the reasons that people leave jobs is a lack of appreciation. It's not finance. It's just a lack of feeling valued. So that's just normal human interaction, isn't it? And you're right. When done well, you use the word. I think you used ambassadors earlier. Effectively, your network becomes ambassadors for you. In the same way that, used well, employees become ambassadors for the brand of the business. So, and the power of that is huge. As you mentioned earlier, you touched on it briefly. Google represents highly content sharing on LinkedIn, and everything that we do on LinkedIn has an influence ultimately on Google's find searchability factors too. So we're getting kind of double the bangs for our bucks really by being active on LinkedIn, particularly if we're writing articles. Articles are actually referenced directly by Google, and therefore it's sometimes the case when I write articles, which is not too frequent for lots of reasons I could explain, but perhaps not now. Posts are more the engagement factor on LinkedIn, but within the content of articles, when I look at the results of where the audience has come from in reading that article, it will often say that this piece of text was actually found on Google, on a Google search. So that's terrific. Now we're not just influencing LinkedIn, we're influencing the world at large in relation to our content sharing and the ability to provide answers to the questions that people are asking. That's the essence of it. Am I providing some value in the content I'm sharing that's actually giving somebody the answer to a question they have? And just another point on that, which is really important, and it relates to the content as well. Going back in time, when I first started on this journey, like you mentioned, having the confidence to think, well, everybody knows this. I see people, far more intelligent and wonderful than I am at this, and thinking, well, in comparison to them, I am Mr. Nobody. What gives me the right to begin to share anything when I can see much people better at it than me? And that happens today. There's some wonderful, wonderful people on LinkedIn who do what I do, and I'm starstruck by what they do. But the brilliant thing is I'm learning from what they do, and therefore being connected to those kind of people improves my knowledge and improves my experience. But the point I was going to make is this, that interestingly, if I write exceptionally clever content, which by the way is rare, but if I have a vision of where the technology is going to go, or LinkedIn's going to develop, or and I think it's really clever, and I'll write a wonderful deep article, with lots of references, and I'll post that. The interaction and the activity and engagement with that content is near zero. Nobody gets it. Nobody's interested. But if I share simpler questions or information, such as, should you share your birthday date on LinkedIn? Well, I didn't know I was. I'm not sure of the settings, and I make the point, well, what's the one piece of security data that anybody may ask you when you're asking for your bank details? Yeah. And frankly, unless you like 100 people saying congrats on your birthday, what is the benefit to you of having that information on LinkedIn? I say, oh, well, the debate I could get right here and now if I posted that content on LinkedIn would be huge. Oh, I didn't know that was possible. Oh, I'm showing information I shouldn't be showing. And I know lots of people engage. Oh, I like people telling me, it's my birthday, and all manner of opinions. So the engagement I can get from that very simple question would be 10, if not 100 times greater than something really clever. What that's taught me is that actually, don't be too clever. Just share simple, knowledgeable things that you might find really simple, but actually people who are early adopters of whatever it is you do don't know the answers to those questions, and therefore are really stimulated by having simple answers to simple questions because they're a different part of their customer journey.
Absolutely. Thanks for the reminder, because in our effort to try and demonstrate to the world and digital world what we're all about, we may have a tendency to over-engineer the whole process and ever to overthink and overcomplicate matters. And sometimes you're right, you need to go back to the simple question, which for you, as the author of that next post and article, is not particularly challenging. You perhaps actually quite blasé about the whole thing, but if you reconnect with the need of the audience, you're going to get there. And when I reflect, this conversation helps me reflect on some of the advice I try and share and steer people with. This idea of just be curious on behalf of your audience. So this idea of, on their behalf, you're going to investigate something to which you may know the answer already, or you don't, and you're going to share your findings. Findings could include an individual that you want to put forward, or a book, or an event, or indeed, a process that can help you forward. But I think it's this gentle measurement plan, which I really like, is back to this idea of, well, on your behalf, I was curious, therefore I did that. And the other way is to essentially retell, back to your example, the recent question you had. So you were at the networking event last week, or you got a phone call, an email, or even you were in the car. There was a program on the radio that triggered a thought, and you retell that with a way of adding value. Excellent. Can we move on quickly to second segment then, which is the solution, the how to do so. So let me give you a scenario. I might give you two, but to begin with, this is a scenario where somebody probably went on LinkedIn some time ago. And I'm sure you'll agree that LinkedIn is not easy to use first time round. There's no instructions. It's not particularly inviting. It's got the appeal of a tax return form when you start to go into dating. So what you do is I call the first pass. You just drop down your information as instructed by LinkedIn. But then that's not quite a great profile. So how would you go back into maybe a second pass to vastly improve the impact of that profile?
You're absolutely right. Most people create a profile at a point in time and never go back to the settings which originated when they set up that profile. And if you go into the settings and privacy column under your own picture on the header of a navigation on LinkedIn, there are 4 columns there, and in the 4 columns there are over 100 different settings appropriate to your profile. Phenomenal. And when I ask the question, working through this with them, they go, "Goodness me, I didn't realize there was all that going on." So you don't know what you've got turned on, turned off. Should be visible, not visible. There's a whole host of questions, and there are some critical ones in there. There are half a dozen, I think, sort of really, really important ones. But the rest are also important. That you just probably haven't been there and looked for a while. So I go through the settings as a critical part of that process to make sure things like, you've uploaded a profile photo on LinkedIn. You can see yourself. It looks fine, but you've got a setting turned off that allows anybody but a first-degree connection to see that photograph. So to everybody looking in at you, you look slightly mistrustful because you're not prepared to show who you are. And when I point that out to people, you go, you mean all this time people haven't been able to see me who don't know me? Oh, well, and these people are in business development. They're like, what? Nuts. So there's a few critical settings like that. But it's hard to go through in a short space of time, Pascal, but what I'd do is I'd say, well, let's just go from the profile from the top down. Have you got a suitable background image that matches the story you want to tell? Story fiction, big issue on LinkedIn. Telling stories is massively powerful. Does your profile photograph maximize the head space in that little circle? If not, you're wasting the opportunity to be recognized and found by an audience, because when your photo travels around with your comments on LinkedIn, it ends up really, really small. So you can't be seen. So if it isn't a headshot, you are wasting sort of the real estate possibilities of sharing. Is your picture a professional picture? Now, I don't mean it needs to be shot in a studio. That's fine if that's the way you choose. But it does need to be the real you. It needs to be authentic. It needs to be smiling. You need to be looking at the lens. Eyeballed. I'm not looking at you now, looking out the window. I'm looking at you on the screen. Humans interact through eyes. So look at the person, look at the lens on the photograph, because you have got that 1% extra chance of connecting with somebody by doing that. And I worked my way down the whole profile. It's your headline saying what you'd like it to say. If you haven't adjusted that headline, it will default to your job title and the company you work at. So managing director of ABC Co, what does that tell anybody? Is, you know, what does ABC Co do? Are you managing director of a large company, a small company? You know, tell people what it is you do in that profile headline. You have 120 characters when implemented on the desktop to tell that story. Get the keywords in there that you'd like to be found for. And I like to use this sense of, you're looking at my profile, it needs to be clear to you, the reader of my profile, how I can help you. And if you get those two essences across in my mind, that's a successful headline. So how can I help you, and make sure that the right keywords are in that space. And I think increasing numbers of people are beginning to use that feature now, but still I come across an awful lot of headlines that tell me nothing, and it's just a wasted opportunity. Plus, it's not attracting the search engine optimization of the use of those keywords, which should be richly used throughout your whole LinkedIn profile. So in your headline, in the about section, in your experience and your skills. So they want to be all in there, of course. And I just work my way down the whole thing. Possibly the most important one of all is the about section. Written in the first person, this is telling the story about me. And I don't think there is a template for a good about section. Everybody's so different. Their life's journey is different. So I don't say, you know, it should follow this pattern. But on the other hand, it does need to say, you know, tell me a little bit about you. And it shouldn't jump straight into the company pitch. You know, at UMI, we do this. Oh, you know, if I wanted to read that, I'd go to the website. Tell me about you. It's about you at that point. So add in the contact details, because unless we're connected on LinkedIn, I don't see your contact details. So why not add those freely there? So if you want to get hold of me, here's an email address, here's my telephone number. Add that into your about information, because then people who are not LinkedIn confident can actually get hold of you without the need to use LinkedIn as a connecting tool. And I guess lastly, just to quickly summarize how I view this, is I sometimes put it into three categories. Where have you been? What's your journey in life so far? What are you doing? Right now, I'm working with these kind of people. I'm blah, blah, blah. And where you're going, that's a bit harder to understand. The way you're going is the essence of, what I'd love to do is work with more people who can benefit from what I do. And you describe what the need of that kind of person is. You know, when you know, the future, you know, will be, is looking great for me, because I'm connecting and I'm working with people where I can deliver my skills to change their lives, you know, whatever it might be. So it's where have you been, what are you doing, and where are you going? If you can get the essence of that inside the about section, it's so much richer as a profile to read than many people either say nothing at all, do a company pitch, but I still know about them. At this point, this is your profile, this is you. It's not the company pitch. So anyway, I work my way right down every essence of the profile and fill them as richly as I can with the information that will help somebody understand the essence of me. And that's the advice I would give to kick that great profile off.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, because you're back to that, which is, you know, the first pass, you know, you read, you have those empty boxes, and the language of LinkedIn makes you want to tell your story from a very factual point of view. You know, historically, this is what I've been up to, and then you work your way back up. And therefore, it gives very much the impression of someone talking about themselves all the time, because that's the first pass. But when you go back and you start to consider the reader, as you pointed out, you then start to add or edit, you know, to tell the story. Well, the reason why, you know, I should mention this particular, you know, path in my career is because these are the skills or the knowledge that now I can apply, you know, to you or the other. So what I tend to do with the work that we do is ask people, just drop it down, because you need the raw ingredients, but then you have to challenge with the famous now what, so what. So in this idea of, you know, you telling me this information as a reader, what do I take away? You know, what does it mean to me? Or how can I then use that to tell somebody else about you? And nobody can remember a historical account of your journey, but what they can remember are those little anecdotes and snippets that says, so that means that activity or skill or whatever allows somebody else to achieve the following, and people remember those cause and effect stories, much better. So can I then invite you to go back to what you said earlier about engagement, and you seem to have some insight into algorithm and the performance of posts and things like this. So have you got anything else you want to add on that?
Oh yeah, big topic. The people sort of, like you and I who specialize in this area, all would like to think we understand the algorithms. And to some extent we do. We maximize what we know, but nobody in the world, possibly LinkedIn included, actually understands the algorithms and could give you a detailed analysis of how that works. But what we do know is that we get what we ask for, so if we are, as I mentioned earlier, if we articulate and have a strategy for our content and we stay on message within the content, then we will attract people and other content to our profile. So that algorithmic sense of being and location will help us be attractive to the world we're trying to be attractive in. So that's the content piece is one. In terms of posting, it's not necessarily all algorithmic, but some of it's psychological as well. So let me give you some tips perhaps on the qualities of what a good post might consist of. Start a post with a very short line. People's brains, if they see a bold multi-line level of text in an opening paragraph on LinkedIn, they just gloss over it and move on. This is it's a transient thing. I'm on the tube, I'm on the rail, I'm just looking down, and things that are just volumes of text are just going to completely turn me off. So make the text content within the body of a post light. Put paragraph breaks where you wouldn't put them. Just create space. It's just easier on the eye, and perhaps open the thing by making a statement or asking a question. It's a bit like the red top newspaper. Grab my attention with the headline. If you're not going to grab my attention with the headline, then I'm probably likely very quickly to move on if you've not captured my imagination in the few words that appear at the top of that post. So that takes some thinking about. But just don't push it off. Just think, well, okay, I've written this article, I've got this thought. How am I going to share what can I do to stimulate the thoughts I've been having about that in a way that's going to grab your attention? And asking a question is sometimes a way of doing that. Equally, I think I touched on it earlier, at the end of the comment, the perspective you want to share, invite the audience, the readers, to get engaged in the conversation that you'd like to have. Because however good the piece of content is, if it doesn't get engagement, and by engagement I mean likes, views, comments, shares, if it doesn't get any of that, then it's a waste of time. So the measure of my success on a particular piece of content would be, well, how many people have viewed it, and whilst it's slightly vanity metrics, if I get more than 5,000 people looking at a piece of content I've written, that makes me feel good. If I get 250, I'm disappointed. If I get 25,000, I'm over the moon. I'm not a celebrity. Those are incredible figures for somebody like me. So that's a measure. However, the likes alone is not what I'm looking for, because that's an easy thing. Click, like, done, move on. What I really want is engagement. So I want comments and shares on that content. So look for ways in which you can increase the engagement through that comments and shares potential, because that's what really develops a conversation. That's where the real nuggets of information begin to happen. Some other tips on a content strategy. We couldn't perhaps have a conversation like this without mentioning the power of video. Video is just so powerful on LinkedIn. it engages people in a way that's just easy to engage. So many more of your brain's parts are stimulated by watching and listening and reacting to a video. And if you think there's a challenge over people having the confidence to get involved in a conversation, boy, is there an issue of feeling comfortable about video. You and I, we do a video, I talk to statues in parks, I do all sorts of daft things. But I'm a bit out there. I've developed the ability and have the confidence to do it. But the first time I did it, that was like, oh, goodness me, that was so hard. And will people like it? Am I looking okay? And am I smiling? Ooh, I said ooh and if and ooh buts. And do you know what? People don't care. They really don't. And I honestly, I've never ever taken a video clip twice. I said to myself, warts and all, whenever I do a video, you're going to get the first take, because that's the authenticism that I want from my brand. I'm not a polished individual. I've got my human frailties. So just have the confidence in yourself and your knowledge to just be yourself and do it. I remember one great example, I won't mention names, a lady said, look, there's just going to be no way I can do that. I said, look, you've got such a great story to tell. Just go and do it. Just go and do it. You promise me you'll do it. Oh, I just feel so uncomfortable. And she did her first video. And I said, just try doing it, on the first take. Oh, and she did what I asked her, bless her. And she published the first take. And it was so bad, it was hilarious, okay? But the real authenticism of her personality came completely across. And she laughed at herself in the video and said, look, I'm going to post this because I want to get out there and I want to start doing this thing. And she got such a warm response from the authenticity of her personal brand that gave her the impetus to go on. And you know what? Her videos now are incredible. She's got such confidence. She's telling the story about her products and services in such a way that I'm envious of. But for getting over that hurdle to do it the first time was such a big thing for her. But so video is just so powerful. So we're back to the point of content. Having the ability or having the training to be able to have the confidence to get in front of a lens and just do that, and video, smartphone, that's how it's done, is a great thing. And mix and match the types of content you do. So videos, post with images, post without images, using hashtags. Hashtags are very, very valuable on LinkedIn now. So associate 3 suitable hashtags with your content. And I don't have a repetition of a certain style of thing. I literally mix up what I do, because the audience that I'm trying to develop and build, I don't think want to see an automated kind of routine thing popping out, something on Monday mornings. I don't have this routine. I'm very sporadic with what I do. So I can sometimes go weeks without posting anything. Usually because I'm really busy, I have to say, and that's not a good thing. One should be doing it regularly as a part of a strategy. But I think I'd rather be authentic with one good piece of content than just churn out stuff for the case of trying to be there with content. So it's quality over quantity, but you've got to kick the game off. So if you're an early adopter of being on LinkedIn and this isn't familiar territory to you, try and have a goal of at least doing something once a week, so just to kick it off. And when you've got that confidence, twice a week. And you'll find your own level then of feeling the mood of the audience and the times that you should post and how many times a week you should post. Because if you've got good content going on, you want to leave yourself some time to engage with it. And if all you're doing is pumping out new stuff, you're losing the opportunity to actually engage with the content you've already done.
I'm so pleased you're mentioning this, Nigel, because, the way that we do, you and I always say, the real value, really when you put a post out, it's a rock in the pond. And you want to have, enough time budget during the day and the week to go back to thank people for the comments, for the sharing, so on and so forth. And there's nothing worse for an audience that will react to your content to say that you're absent from the platform, and then their goodwill will just go and disappear. So I'm really pleased you mentioned that idea of really you're back to your point you made at the very start of this conversation. you are using the tools of the time to get to the point of a conversation. And the evidence of that is you are already having conversation in a virtual sense as opposed to doing what is happening. Listen, unfortunately, our time together is nearly coming to an end, would you believe? But I won't let you go just yet without asking your view, which is something you mentioned a moment ago, about the future of LinkedIn and perhaps what we can look forward to as individuals and businesses when we look to use LinkedIn as part of our sales and lead generation strategy. Are there things that is coming around the corner that we should be paying attention or getting ourselves ready for?
Really good question. Do you know what? LinkedIn is such a frustrating tool in terms of its direction of travel. You know, things are taken away, things are added, and it's so hard to predict what goes on in that world of LinkedIn. What I do see happening, Pascal, is that you know, thankfully and luckily for me, a lot of people are waking up to a better understanding of what it can do when used properly. And I think, you know, we haven't touched on things like upgrades to LinkedIn. Should one pay for an upgrade to LinkedIn? My answer to that would be no. Not unless you're maximizing free. Sales Navigator is almost a different tool within LinkedIn, and highly valuable it is. But you shouldn't necessarily think that by paying LinkedIn any money, you're going to have any particular advantage, because you won't. Unless you're not maximizing the use of it, there's no point having it. So I think there's still a long way for people to use LinkedIn correctly, as opposed to think that I can stroke a magic ball and know what the future's looking like for it. I don't see anything coming up on the other side. So I don't see anybody competing with LinkedIn in terms of its ability to lead generate. If I did, I'd be very interested in that option very, very quickly. So I don't see that happening. LinkedIn is by far and away, in my opinion, the best lead generation business-to-business tool that there is out there, and I don't see anything competing with it right now. So I just think LinkedIn has still got a lot to learn in understanding its users, and that frustrates me a lot sometimes. So I feel that there's a lot more to be got out of LinkedIn just as it stands, as opposed to worrying about where it's going next, if I'm honest. It will change. Things get added and they get taken away. But as far as I'm concerned, it's such a brilliant tool to understand and use correctly, even with its foibles, shall we say. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to be here for a while yet until something comes along that replaces it.
Well, listen, thank you so much. I have no doubt that people will have enjoyed this conversation, even rewind and start to take notes as I did a moment ago with those wonderful insights of yours. If people, I should say, when people have more questions for you, what is the easiest way to get in touch with you? Maybe ask those questions.
You can simply search for me on LinkedIn, of course, Nigel Cliffe, CLIFFE. That's the most obvious place, and you know, say hello on LinkedIn. That will be fine. My website is also rich in content, as you might expect as a marketer. That's linkedintraining.co.uk. We'll find lots of information, and my blogs are regularly shared on there in terms of knowledge sharing. So you know, just you can spend a few minutes there and learn lots of things. So yeah, I would say linkedintraining.co.uk and just search for Nigel Cliffe on LinkedIn. Thank you for asking me.
No problem at all. Now, I can't help thinking, you must have been so thrilled when you found that URL, linkedintraining.co.uk, was not taken.
Well, it was taken. I obtained
it.
Yes, that is. I have to say, it's a valuable URL. I have to say.
It's excellent. So listen, to you, our viewers and listeners, a huge thank you for your support and for continuing to send your feedback and suggestions how we can improve Table Talk. We probably, I hope you don't mind me saying so, but we may see Nigel Cliffe back at a forthcoming episode to explore maybe LinkedIn in a different facet, because this has been so enjoyable and allowed me as well to have a platform to catch up with my peers and friends. Until next time, can I wish you the very best of luck with all your endeavors, and do apply the advice that you heard from Nigel and let him know that it is working. I know that means a lot to you as well. Until next time, See you soon. Bye-bye.